I'm Dr. Suman Malukani. Today we'll talk about the structure of lumbar vertebra. The vertebral column is composed of 33 vertebrae and 23 intervertebral discs divided into 5 distinct regions: cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral and coccygeal. Lumbar region constitutes 5 lumbar vertebrae. The first 4 lumbar vertebrae are similar in structure, and the 5th vertebra has structural adaptations for its articulation with sacrum. Let us now see the structure of a typical lumbar vertebra.
A typical vertebra has two major parts: anterior vertebral body and posterior neural or vertebral arch. A typical lumbar vertebral body is massive. The transverse diameter is more as compared to the AP diameter. It is also more in height as compared to the vertebral body of other regions of the spine. Vertebral body is the weight-bearing structure of spinal column. The posterior or the neural vertebral arch has two major parts. One is the pedicle and the rest of the posterior elements. Pedicles are the bridge between the anterior vertebral body and the posterior neural or vertebral arch. The pedicles in the lumbar region are oriented posterior-laterally. The weight transmission from the posterior elements occurs through the pedicle towards the anterior vertebral body. Coming over to the posterior element, it constitutes transverse processes, articular processes, superior and inferior, spinous process and lamina. The transverse processes of a typical lumbar vertebra are long and horizontal. The spinous process of the typical lumbar vertebra are broad, thick and horizontal. Both transverse process and spinous process provide site for muscular attachment. These are the superior articular processes, inferior articular processes, also called as zygoprophyseal articular process or facets. The superior articular processes articulate with adjacent cranial vertebra, and the inferior articular processes articulate with adjacent caudal vertebra. The orientation of the lumbar articular surfaces is more predominant in the sagittal plane, so that the flexion extension movements are more predominant over the lumbar region. These are the laminas. Laminas are more central and form the point of origin for rest of the posterior elements. The laminas are oriented vertically and the pedicles are oriented horizontally. Laminas transfer the force from rest of the posterior elements to the pedicle, through which it is transmitted to the anterior vertebral body. The part of the lamina from where the transmission of forces occurs from vertical orientation to horizontal orientation is called as pars interarticularis. Pars interarticularis is situated between the superior and the inferior articular surfaces. The vertebral foramen of a typical lumbar vertebra are triangular in shape. The transverse diameter is more as compared to the AP diameter.
Thank you everyone.